Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 30th and tonight's classic is The Silence of the Lambs. I swear that the process of choosing which film to watch on a given day was completely random, but for some reason all the really huge ones were saved for the very end. The Silence of the Lambs is one of the most notorious horror/thriller movies of all time, and it's very famous for being one of only 3 movies to win the Big 5 at the Academy Awards. Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Screenplay, whether adapted or original. And while that's less of a sign of a particularly extraordinary film and more so a sign of a less than spectacular year for movies, it's still quite the accomplishment. This movie is mostly famous for introducing one of the most famous psychos in movie history, Hannibal Lecter, who's played by Anthony Hopkins, even though he's not actually the main villain of this movie. Today was the first time I ever saw this flick, and I have to say, it was pretty good. I'm giving Silence of the Lambs an 8 out of 10. In this movie, Clarice Starling, played by Jodie Foster, is an aspiring policewoman. She's in the top of her class at the police academy, and she's asked to do something to help with another case of a serial killer that's been nicknamed Buffalo Bill. The idea is that they're interviewing psychopaths they've already have locked up in order to get psychological profiles and maybe help them with future cases, and they want her to interview the most dangerous one in the entire asylum, a cannibal named Hannibal Lecter. I will say that it would have been very hard to make this work, and for the most part, the movie does pull this off, but it would have been kind of a challenge to sort of deal with the fact that there are essentially 2 movies happening at once in Silence of the Lambs. The first one is the Buffalo Bill plot, the main one where they're trying to hunt him down and also save one of the people that he kidnapped, because I think he had kidnapped and killed 5 women at that point, and they want to save this one before it's too late. And the other half of the movie is about Hannibal Lecter and what he's up to. Something about Hannibal Lecter and Anthony Hopkins' performance, I don't know if this was planned or not, but it's definitely something in the final product. He does not look intimidating at all. He just looks like a regular old guy. But when he starts talking, it starts creep in that he's definitely a lot smarter than you and is also very malevolent, Machiavellian, wants to get into people's heads and mess with them. Basically, on a whim, he was able to whisper something into the person in the neighboring cell and make him kill himself. Physically or mentally, if you give this guy an inch, he'll take a mile. But Starling is up to the task, and I did quite like this character, as well as the performance by Jodie Foster. She kind of had this, no-nonsense, blunt thing. I really like the southern accent. She just seemed like a very genuine, normal type of person. Hannibal Lecter was more disturbing and creepy in theory, when you actually look at him, he's not an intimidating person, and while the performance is good, it's not terrifying in the way that I think that they wanted it to be. Then we got Buffalo Bill, who sort of goes in between being really scary and just kind of silly. Well, there is a lot going on in Silence of the Lambs. It's basically 2 movies going on at once. It's all grounded and centered around the main character, Clarice Starling. She's a really good character. She's a rookie, but she's not incompetent. She's confident, but she's not made out of stone. She does get affected by some of this stuff, and she does show weakness, but she also sort of fights through it because she really wants to solve this case. The plot was very simple, but the execution of that plot is done very well and made a very solid movie. Nothing perfect, but it was a good watch, and I'm glad that I saw it. Okay, now let's go into some spoilers. Buffalo Bill's thing is that he has this really terrible psychosis that for some reason he sort of translate as gender dysmorphia or something, and he applied to get his sex changed, but he was turned down. Apparently he didn't actually have it. He was just nuts. So his solution is to find women, skin them, and make a woman's suit out of woman's skin and wear it. By the way, Buffalo Bill, Norman Bates from Psycho, and Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre were all inspired by the exact same real-life serial killer, Ed Gein, so I guess in a weird way we have him to thank for creating a few horror icons. The thing about Buffalo Bill is that Hannibal Lecter is smooth and slimy, like a snake personified into a human, but Buffalo Bill does not sound intelligent. He sounds dopey, he talks like this, and he sort of just says stuff weird. The famous lines from him are, "It puts the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again," or "It puts the lotion in the basket," which also sort of adds to just the detached, calculating aspect of him. He doesn't see the women that he captures as people. He sees them as objects, basically. He treats his dog with more humanity than he treats any of his victims. He has this tiny little toy poodle, and he's really gushy and weird over it. It's kind of strange. The poodle's named Precious. And it's definitely a contrast to see him go from totally psychotic to weird, annoying Instagram dog lady. While getting information about the Buffalo Bill case from Hannibal Lecter has to be transported to somewhere else, and she's not there for this. It's not her fault at all, but Hannibal Lecter manages to break out of his cell using basically only a part of a pen. And he, one thing that was very clever in this movie, I was not expecting it, was that he disguised himself as one of the dead bodies of the two guards that came in to look at him. He cut off that person's face and put on that face and that person's clothes and like shoved the person's dead faceless body into an elevator for the people to find. So he totally breaks free, which sucks. But at the end of the movie, Buffalo Bill is captured. Actually, he's not captured. He's killed. Sterling saves the day, gets to become a real policewoman, and saves the person who is in danger before she can get skinned alive. But the movie ends with Dr. Lecter giving her a phone call in another place, I'm guessing either Africa or the Caribbean, and he gives an ominous warning, obviously setting up for a sequel, which did happen. It was called Hannibal, and leaves, and then the movie ends. While Silence of the Lambs is not perfect, it was a pretty good movie and obviously had a lot of very good people working on it. A lot of good performances, good writing. I'd say good directing. For the most part, the directing is good, but there was something about the cinematography that kind of bugged me. There was way too much of when a character talks, it's the camera's right up against their face and switches back and forth between two really close-up shots. It was a little distracting, but it was just a stylistic thing. So yeah. Other than that, and a few of the other stuff that I already mentioned, The Silence of the Lambs is a pretty good movie. Alright, I'll see you tomorrow on Halloween night, where you can finally finish this.